After a tumultuous 1967, what was the year 1968 like for Buford Pusser? With 1967 in Buford's rearview mirror, was 1968 going to be a better year? Looking back at 67, he had an attempted assassination in January of 67, and then, of course, his wife was killed in August of 1967 as well. Let's take a look at what 1968 was like for Buford. One of the first mentions of Buford Pusser in 1968 was a newspaper item in the Key Point Weekly Report out of New Jersey, dated February 1st. And it was a story about moonshining in Tennessee and how much was being produced, how it was being sold, how dangerous it was for law enforcement to go after these groups. And they talked about how that they would have booby traps set up around their stills, Molotov cocktails, so on. How profitable it was for the moonshiners and how dangerous it was for law enforcement. In this, it mentions Buford's wife was the victim of an attempted assassination against Buford himself, and how that she was killed, and that Buford had made himself an enemy of the state line. Now, it's interesting to note that the state line didn't sell moonshine. They sold bonded alcohol that was bootlegged in. So, here's another confusing thing to support Buford's story when it's really not all that relevant. Now, the next story of importance is one concerning an event at the end of February of 1968 when Paul David English escaped from the McNairy County Jail. There was a car chase, a little bit of a gun battle. English was wounded severely, being partially paralyzed. But this story is so interesting in itself, I've reserved an entire episode just for it, so we'll cover it in detail later. The Jackson Sun on May 13th of 1968 announced that the Democratic Party in McNairy County had chosen William Littlejohn, a local sign painter and former insurance salesman, to represent their party in the race for sheriff and oppose incumbent Buford Pusser. The next item is from July 30th of 1968. There was a heated election that year, mostly concerning the superintendents of schools race in McNairy County. It appears that Adamsville was constructing a new and modern high school, and there were moves to possibly consolidate the school district into one. So Adamsville had fears that the students from their school might be consolidated into the Selmer School District. Other than that, the part about Buford concerns his contested race that year for sheriff against a Democratic opponent, William Littlejohn, who was a sign painter and a former insurance salesman in Selmer. The Jackson Sun on August 2nd of 1968 announced that Hearst had narrowly won its victory as the superintendent of public schools in McNairy County. And it also mentioned that incumbent Sheriff Buford Pusser also won his race as sheriff of McNairy County, defeating William Littlejohn. Pusser received 4,185 votes to Littlejohn's 2,495. Be sure and subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll get notifications of new videos when they're released. The headline of the Jackson Sun on September 5th reads, Sheriff declares war. McNairy County Sheriff Buford PUSSER has declared war on operators of illegal whiskey stills in his county. In the past 6 days, he has destroyed 2 stills, and others are expected to follow. Sheriff PUSSER is in an all-out effort to eradicate illegal whiskey operations in his county. PUSSER, along with deputies Willie Smith and P.D. Plunk, Tuesday destroyed a 1,000-gallon moonshine operation in the Bethel, Mount Peter area of the county. The next thing to catch the attention of both the media and the public was a song called "The Ballad of Buford PUSSER." It was recorded by Memphis music recording personality Eddie Bond. Now, Bond would go on to record several other songs in the next year or so about Buford, mostly songs which were embellished and made the sheriff look really good. If you're wanting to learn the real story of Buford PUSSER, I have a book, Buford PUSSER, The Other Story. It's printed in an 8.5 by 11 format, so the documents that are inside, photographs that are here, will be easy to read, easy to see. There's all sorts of interesting things in there as it tells the real story, not the embellished and fabricated stories that so many other books have contained. The next item to catch the media's attention was Buford's claims that he was still looking for his wife's killer. Now, he said as far as he was concerned, the case would not be closed until the person or persons that killed his wife were apprehended. Of course, he would also say that they had many suspects, but not enough evidence to really pin it on anyone in particular, but said it was caused by the lawless element that was at the Mississippi-Tennessee border, that the raids that he had conducted on the establishments down there were the cause of the ambush. Now, at the same time, of course, Eddie Bond had just released his record, The Ballad of Buford PUSSER, which extolled the merits of Sheriff PUSSER trying to clean up the state line area. It is interesting to note that Aubrey Doc Whitaker, who was the manager of the lone radio station in McNairy County, WDTM, pulled that record from the rotation, saying that he had a lot of complaints from people in the county that felt like that the embellished tale was giving McNairy County a black eye because it referred to the county as Murder City, USA. Next is the news item from the Jackson Sun, dated December 18, 1968, where it reports that 8 sheriff's officers and state troopers raided a whiskey still and arrested 2 men in the Purdy community. Larry Stanley, 47, and his nephew, Roger Stanley, were charged with possession and manufacture of untaxed whiskey. Conducting the raid was McNairy County Sheriff Buford PUSSER, and he was assisted by his deputies, P.D. Plunk and Willie Smith, along with several other state officials. The media also reported a lot of news about Eddie Bond's recording of The Ballad of Buford PUSSER in the month of December, how well it was doing. That record sold about 100,000 copies. But that was overshadowed by the Christmas Day shooting of Russ Hamilton in Selmer. That is another story that is so interesting that I'm going to make a complete episode out of it as well. So that will be in the mix for later. And that was the year 1968 in McNairy County, Tennessee. For Sheriff PUSSER, it wasn't a lot unlike what other sheriffs may have experienced back in those days, with the possible exception of the Hamilton shooting. And as I said, that one holds some significant interest. Now, with August 12th approaching, and it being the anniversary of the 1967 alleged ambush in which Pauline PUSSER was killed and Buford was wounded, I intend to do a special video for that with 2 guests. Of course, Dennis Hathcock, who was there that morning, and also Tim Lancaster. Now, Tim's dad was a deputy sheriff in Alcorn County who happened to be at the ambush scene that morning. So I'd like to hear what both of those men have to say about the ambush itself. This one ought to be really interesting, so I hope you come back for that. Also, I just wanted to point out that, I do want to express that Buford did a lot of good things in McNairy County while he was sheriff. Unfortunately, a lot of his stories have been embellished to the extreme. So I'm just trying to sort out the truth from the myth. I know that irritates a lot of people. Some people hold Buford in really high regard. Others see a totally different idea of what the man was. So that is the purpose of these videos, is so that you can decide by examining information that you probably didn't previously have. I hope you join us for the upcoming episodes, especially the one next week regarding the ambush. So until then, just remember, the truth has no agenda.